lost both parents in one day.
That pain made me who I am.
Why did you help me?
Because you needed help.
I will help you fight Zod.
Wait, he's Batman?
I'm Batman. Let's get nuts.
You heard it up top. That's right. We are getting down with the quickness. We're talking about the most serious speedster in the game. We're talking and reviewing the latest DC superhero movie. Long awaited for some people. It's been pushed back, reshot, this and that. But it's finally here, and we're going to talk about The Flash. Cinematic experience of the summer, apparently. With your host, I'll be Molly West.
Nice. And I'll be Jake Garrick. Jay Garrick, the Silver Age Flash.
Oh, yes. Nice.
Yeah, he's the one with the metal bucket hat.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's
Full
favorite,
spoilers
obviously. Yeah.
For this movie, but we do see a little bucket hat maybe here and there. But yeah, we'll be spoiling the whole movie, talking our opinions, liked it, dislikes, all that. But before that, I wanted to let everybody know, first of all, we have covered The Flash in the past, back in 2020. We did a whole episode dedicated to all the iterations of The Flash, diving into the CW, the cartoons, this and that. And Jacob, if you want to bring everybody up to speed, kind of, where up to speed with your background with The Flash. This is one of a character you enjoy quite heavily, right?
Yeah, I didn't know if I had mentioned it on the podcast. I totally forgot that we did an episode on The Flash in 2020. Yeah. But, growing up, I was always more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy. I wasn't a comics reader, but I was a fan of the animated shows, like Batman animated series, obviously was a huge thing in my childhood. And I watched X-Men and Spider-Man and stuff on the Marvel side as well. But my favorite was Batman. And then after Batman, there was Justice League, right, on Cartoon Network, I believe. And that was the same universe as the Batman. It's Kevin Conroy Batman and everything. And in the Justice League, I was just a huge fan of The Flash. And The Flash was my favorite superhero growing up. So most people like Batman or Spider-Man. I like those characters too. But my number one guy, got to be The Flash, right?
Nice. I mean, I've been a childhood fan of a certain speedster as well, but my speedster of choice is Sonic the Hedgehog. I had one comic book of his, very good, fast hero. And then I was also, as you mentioned, I was more of a Spider-Man person. So when we did the episode on The Flash, it was cool to kind of get to know a little bit more of the history of this character and the different people who've put on the winged hat and, run for it, or run with it. And we're here with another iteration now in this episode.
Yeah. And, this movie, I was excited for it when it was announced just because The Flash... We've never had a live action Flash solo movie. We still really haven't, arguably, but
right.
We've had how many Batman movies, how many Spider-Man movies, no Flash movies. So this is the first live action Flash movie. So I'm basically the audience for this movie, being a Flash fan. And so I was excited, to hear about it. Of course, the production of it didn't go that well. Obviously, the issues with the lead actor, which
I guess just to say up top, none of this episode is condoning any alleged behavior from Ezra Miller or any of their kind of activities offset, etc. Right. We don't endorse any kind of thing like that. I was going to this just as a curiosity of where does it leave the DCEU. We're getting James Gunn to take over, so I'm coming into it like as not really a Flash fan. I'm just like, where does this leave this universe that they're building? And that's kind of was my curiosity with it as well.
Yeah, and it's a kind of a unique circumstances where this movie has been in production for so long that it really was a remnant of the last universe that is now over with the James Gunn announcement. They're rebooting. It was once called the DC EU, I believe. And the new James Gunn run soft reboot, if you will, is going to be the DCU. So Reloaded. It's very simple. You got the MCU, you got the DCU, right?
Right. Well, see, I figured Reloaded because of the James Gunn taking it over. But it's in it. So we knew there was going to be some time travel and like something with multiverse. And it's like, okay, is this a perfect way for them to back into the James Gunn verse? And we'll dive into all that and where it kind of goes when we get to the episode proper. But that's kind of what brought us to it. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to mention, so the James Gunn announcement was a few months ago, right? This movie's been in production for like 5 years.
Yeah.
A lot of troubles, I think they switched directors a couple of times, but it's finally coming out, and it really is like the last remnants of this, past Justice League universe, along with Aquaman 2 that's going to be coming out later this year, and Blue Beetle. Very, interesting that those movies are coming out when they are. And of course,
Somehow-
Shazam 2. They're kind
Not
of stuck
great.
in this like no man's land between these universes, right? So, and we'll talk about all that too. But I just wanted to mention also, Colin, obviously not here today. He did tell me he needed to go back to the past to change something about his past. So he's
right.
being very cryptic, but I think he might be trapped in the Speed Force. So
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, something about tomato cans or something. Yeah. Okay, no worries. But we'll catch up with him hopefully next week with what's coming down the pipeline. But I guess for now, let's go ahead and tap into the Speed Force and just get straight into our review of The Flash, the long-awaited Flash, right after this. So run, Barry, run. We're back in the present future. Who knows? But we're back and we're talking The Flash. And speaking of past, present, future, this is based on, even with my limited knowledge, it's kind of based on a famous story in the Flash comic run. It's known as Flashpoint. So do you think you could explain kind of the history of this storyline and live action comic, cartoon, all the kind of runs they've taken at it? Because it is a really big deal.
Yeah. So you were mentioning like they're sort of using this movie to transition universes or soft reboot their universe. And that's exactly what the Flashpoint storyline in the comics was for. So, the thing about DC Comics history, it's very long and convoluted, the timeline of the continuity, right? But every once in a while, they would reboot sort of the universe and the continuity in DC Comics, usually when sales were lagging or something, they needed to change it up. So, and these changes aren't always popular. But in 2011, they decided, you know what? DC Comics is getting stale. Sales are down. We're going to reboot the universe. We're going to cancel every line of comics that we have and reboot with 52 new series. And that was known as the New 52, right?
Okay. And this is 2011 this is going down?
2011.
Oh, Green Lantern came out that year. Okay, makes sense. DC says we need to...
Yeah, so they canceled everything.
Right.
Even their old like Action Comics and Detective Comics that had been numbered with their original numbering since the 1930s, they canceled the numbering of those and just started everything at 0, which is kind of a big deal in the comics world. And the New 52 wasn't super popular. It lasted from 2011 to 2016 before they rebooted again with Justice League Rebirth, I believe it was called. But they just do that. Obviously the comic books industry isn't what it once was. It's mainly used now to sort of adapt stories into movies, which obviously comic book movies are a much bigger industry than the comic books themselves now.
Yeah, for sure.
But all that to say, they rebooted to the New 52, and the way they were going to do that was this Flash-centric crossover story called Flashpoint, right?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and that of course involves, and that's what this movie is loosely based on, and that involves the Flash, Barry Allen. Obviously, his formative origin story is that his mom was killed when he was a kid, and his dad was framed for her murder. And so he's going back in time. So he obviously Speed Force. Speed Force basically means he can do anything, right? This is a concept where he can tap into the Speed Force. He can use it to travel in time. Many other things. If you watch the CW show, it's basically like the Force in Star Wars, where you can kind of use it to explain a lot of different things, right?
It's a good MacGuffin to have, right? I mean, we know in real science, like if you move close enough to the speed of light, you're basically time traveling, and if you can go faster than, so there's a little bit of theoretical science that's like, if you just go super fast, time travel can happen, and that's kind of the mechanism by which they're using these resets, and that's what he wants to do, right? Is try to save his mom.
And time travel, obviously, when you start messing with time travel, you get paradoxes and those kind of things. And obviously, we had a lot of time travel and multiverse stuff just recently, right? Multiverses are very popular right now. And so this is DC's attempt at that. So time travel, the thing about time travel.
It's like a spaghetti. It's like a bunch of
Yes,
wet
it's like
spaghetti.
spaghetti.
Right.
That's right. So Barry Allen's going to go back in time, stop his mother from dying, and fix his past, right?
Yep.
As anyone would want to do if they lost their mother as a
Hmm.
child. So he does that, but then he realizes that more things have changed than he realized, and essentially he created a new branching timeline. Blah blah blah. So we have a parallel universe type situation,
The
right?
butterfly effect and all that, right? You
Yes.
change one thing and now everything else is gone crazy, right?
Yeah, so this movie is loosely adapted from that. There are some differences with the Flashpoint story, and I know um, an animated movie that I recommended to you that we both watched after watching this movie, Justice League: The
Yes.
Flashpoint Paradox from 2013, which is a more direct adaptation of the comic book storyline.
Yeah, yeah, and I would love to maybe after review of the movie, kind of discuss some of the compare and contrast some of the things they did with those projects
Yes,
after
yes.
focusing on this live action.
Um,
But I was curious to check out more about this kind of Flashpoint concept after seeing the live action, and I'm grateful that you recommended it because I did enjoy watching the DC animated film, which I've heard good things about the DC animated films anyway, being better almost than the
Absolutely.
live action. So
And I
far,
think
one for one.
I've mentioned those before on this podcast as
Hmm.
well. And I just think the Flash is a great character when utilized properly, and he's been sort of underutilized in the history of DC movies. And that's the thing, being a DC fan. Uh, what the DC movies have gone through the last couple of years. All I've wanted was good, DC movies, and so I'm hoping James Gunn will bring that. Um, but let's talk about this movie, The Flash. What's good about
Yeah,
it?
so
What's bad
obviously
about it?
the best iteration of the Flash in your opinion, Ezra Miller's take on the character. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is our most recent. This is what we have, obviously, from the Justice League movies. We're introduced to him through the Snyder/Whedon, whatever that debacle was. We get the Flash in there.
Yeah.
I do like some of what happened in the Snyder cut. Like the ending of that film was pretty dynamic. Him run, Barry, run. Like there's some excitement. Like the character did seem more interesting, but I didn't know a ton about them.
Yeah,
Again,
he did have
yeah.
yeah, he had a good part in the Snyder cut. And to recap on the Snyder cut, I did like the Snyder cut better than the Justice League theatrical cut, which was the Whedon,
Yeah.
cross mixture of two different directors, which was a complete mess. The Snyder cut was an improvement on that. But the Flash was almost the last member of the Justice League, other than Cyborg, to not get a solo movie. Cyborg. Well,
Hmm.
obviously, this iteration of Cyborg will never get a solo movie. But other than that, everyone else in the Justice League has had one except Flash.
Right.
So, excited to talk about it. I think the main difference from the Flashpoint storyline and from Flash's general storylines is the lack of his main rival. I'm talking the Reverse Flash, right?
Right. Yes.
Uh,
Yellow
Great
suit.
name. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He
So
looks like the
imaginative.
Flash, but with a yellow suit. Real name Eobard Thawne, sometimes called Reverse Flash, sometimes called Zoom or Professor Zoom.
Love it.
Sometimes Zoom is like in the CW show, Zoom is just a different villain character that's also a speedster. It doesn't matter. It's not
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
But
Multiverse.
Eobard Thawne is very important to Flash's whole mythology, like as important as the Joker is to Batman or Lex Luthor is to Superman. So I thought it was a little strange that they didn't really include him in this Flash movie.
No, no, no. And again, full spoilers for this film coming up and
Yes,
all that. But because Eobard Thawne was like the main villain in the Flashpoint
that's
Paradox.
right.
Not to get too into it, but it's like, and he's from
Yeah,
the future generally, so there's always a
he's
time travel
from
element with the Flash,
yes.
right? Even as
So
villains.
Eobard Thawne, also very important in the CW show, which I was a big fan of back in the day. Um, Eobard Thawne is from the 25th century. He's Flash's biggest rival. He recreated the accident that gave Flash his powers because he wanted super speed like the Flash. I think at first he idolized the Flash in the future because the Flash is
Hmm.
like this big superhero. But then he, recreated his experiment, got super speed, um, basically just became evil and wanted to ruin Barry's life as much as possible. Barry Allen, right?
Yeah.
So he goes back in the past, messes with stuff. In some again, since he's not in this movie, it's not really important. But like in the CW version of this storyline,
Mm-hmm.
Eobard Thawne is the one that kills Flash's mom.
Okay,
So
yeah.
in this movie, they don't really touch on like who actually killed her.
We
It's
never
just some
find
random
out
like
who.
break-in. Yeah,
We just
but
know
in the
that.
CW, he goes back in time, kills Barry's mom, and frames his
Mhm.
dad, and basically ruins his life, which is what Barry wants to fix, right?
Come on, Eobard. Yeah. So the CW has tackled this. The animated films have tackled this kind of concept, and so
It's
have the
pretty
comic
much,
books. So it's
yeah.
ubiquitous with the character.
Ever since 2011, this became like the main Flash storyline, and a lot of fans of the Flash are they're kind of tired of time travel stuff because time travel became to define the Flash character so much since then because you know super speed allows him to just time travel so easily, but that you know eventually defines his whole character, which
Yeah,
some
it's
people just
like
want more like speedster adventures. He can do other
yeah.
stuff.
Right. There's a
Um,
lot of creative things with the powers, I think, that would get overlooked if you lean into time travel. So DC, we know they're rebooting their universe. This was in work long before that was even happening. So they're trying to reshape it as it's going. But in this version, Barry Allen does go back to try to save his mom. But this time when he goes back, there's a branching timeline, but there's also another Barry. He meets himself. He meets his 18-year-old
yes.
self, and he's kind of now the mentor to the mentee of his younger self. And that's kind of he loses his powers, and then he's trying to be like, "Oh shit, what do we do?" And he's trying to now kind of buddy comedy with himself, and they're trying to
Yes.
figure out the universe that they're in. What are the changes? How do we get back? And et cetera. That's kind of
So you
our
get two Barry Allens,
yeah.
two Ezra Millers.
Uh-huh. They crush
You
it.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, acting against
Yep.
themselves.
Yep.
A literal they them, if you will.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, and I did like the dynamic of like the younger Barry versus the older, more mature Barry, and then eventually older Barry's just like, hey, can you just like shut the fuck up for like 2 seconds and stop being like immature? And he
Yeah.
realizes how like he must have come off to other people, at a younger age when he was like a more immature character, right?
Yeah, and he's just
I like that
wisecracking in the
contrast.
Justice League. Yeah, there's stuff that does work here. Like, I don't think I dislike this movie like in its entirety. I don't think it's perfect by any means,
Yeah,
but I think there was some good stuff here, and I got to give Ezra Miller credit. Like, they did a good job. I think with this
yeah,
role, there's some good emotional moments. Like, I bought into like a lot of the emotional arcs and energy of this just based off their performance and
yes,
credit them, but again, not endorsing
and
offset activities.
right. No, I like that contrast. And
Mm-hmm.
the younger Barry is a more carefree Barry because he's the Barry that grew up with a mom and with a
Mm-hmm.
dad that wasn't in jail. So he had a loving family and support. So he has like nothing to worry about. And then older Barry is like, you don't understand how good you have it. Like
It's
you
like
just take everything
resentful.
for granted. Yeah. So I love that contrast. And I found the younger Barry annoying at times just because he was sort of like the more immature, quippy Barry, just not taking anything seriously, joking all the time. But that's intended in the story to show contrast with the older Barry, right? So I did like that.
Yeah. And I wish they would. I mean, he has different hair. I wish there was just a little bit more distinction, maybe facially, between them. Like, because they kind of look the same age. One Barry's supposed to be 18, but other
Yeah,
than
I feel
that,
like I think they did like age down the younger one with effects a little bit, right? But it wasn't like super obvious. But
drastic
like he's
enough.
not. But like I don't think Ezra Miller isn't that much older than young Barry. I guess young Barry is like 20 or something, and then old Barry is like Ezra Miller's current age, like 30 or something. I don't know how old
Something like
they
that,
are.
yeah. But
Yeah.
either way, that's a nitpick, and I think it's a fun dynamic. And as it kind of develops throughout the movie, I think it works. We end up getting the powers going, and then he has to teach Barry too how to use them. Like all that stuff is kind of working for me.
Yeah. And I mean, it's an interesting choice that the main actor that Ezra Miller has to act against is themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before obviously Michael Keaton shows up and Supergirl shows up, which we'll get to. But a good part of the movie is just two Flashes interacting.
Yeah,
And I actually liked this part of the movie. Like the first 2/3 of the movie was the best part of the movie. I thought the end, it kind of falls apart a little bit for me. Um,
mm-hmm.
and overall, I don't think it's like an amazing or a great movie, but I do think it's a better movie than some of the lows of DC over the past few years, like Suicide Squad 2016, Justice League, like we mentioned, Batman versus Superman. Like I think it's better than all of those movies.
84, I'd say it's better than Wonder Woman 84. Maybe not
Yes,
better than
that
Wonder
as well.
Woman original, but definitely 84. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's totally a fine, decent movie. It's just, it's in a weird spot because, like you said, it's almost like the end of this dying stage of cinema. And maybe we'll talk more about how it's faring and stuff. But it's in a weird spot.
Very interesting.
But when it's just doing its own thing, it's working, right? You know?
Yeah, and I wish it would focus on that emotional part of the story. But of course, the way they marketed this movie, it's very interesting because obviously this comes out post Spider-Man No Way Home, a movie that I think that's very important to this movie, because this is basically DC's version of No Way Home, or them attempting to do something similar. Also, it comes out a few weeks after Across the Spider-Verse. Not great timing for DC because that movie is so widely praised right now.
Oh man, yeah.
And also deals with multiverses. So you could argue, you know, MCU has already done this better. Sony Spider-Verse has done it better. So multiverses at this point, you have everything everywhere all at once. You know, multiverses are getting a little. There's too many of them, right?
A little tired. Yeah, I
People are
agree.
getting tired of it.
Yeah, they're starting to wear thin. We'll get the Nintendo, the NCU. Remember, we're gonna have our Smash Brothers culmination film. But so their stab at, like you said, Far From Home or whatever. We do have, you know, a couple Batmans in here, as we saw. You know, Michael Keaton, but in the very beginning, he's talking to Batfleck, saying, "I can fix everything," and Batfleck says, "Hey, you could also mess it up," and he doesn't listen because, you know. So we get a little bit of Batfleck here, a little action scene for him,
and we actually get, in terms of cameos from the current or the recent Justice League, we do get most of them except Cyborg, I think, at some point in this, and Superman, except Superman and Cyborg. We get little Wonder Woman cameo in the beginning. We get an Aquaman after the credits scene.
Yep.
And we get Batfleck. And I did think it was a little bittersweet because even though I may not have loved all these movies, I did like the casting of Ben Affleck as Batman. I liked his version of the character. I like, you know, Gal Gadot. I like Jason Momoa. So I like these characters. I just wish they were in better movies sometimes.
Yeah, they definitely had the casting right. Like Henry Cavill's great as Superman too. Like they did have a good roster. You know, it's just they couldn't put anything on film that was like cohesive or engaging enough to the general audience even to just make enough money and get enough buzz to continue the way Marvel had. But they definitely had the right casting, I think.
Yeah, and I just feel bad for the Batfleck iteration of the character because he really never really got a chance to kind of thrive on his own. He never even really got a solo movie. He had Batman versus Superman, right?
Yeah.
But and now we have Battinson, who I also like, but
that's
it was a little bittersweet.
Entirely, yeah.
Yeah, it was a little bittersweet seeing most likely the last appearance of Batfleck. Maybe, I don't know about Wonder Woman, and I know Aquaman is going to have a new movie. Wonder Woman, it still might be Gal Gadot according to casting rumors with James Gunn's new universe. So
yeah,
it's a little bittersweet.
Yeah, it's wild. But I guess we'll move the plot forward here, getting to our second Batman. You know, because the first thing we do is the two Barrys. They want to get the powers going, right, for Barry 2. So they go and recreate that, right?
Right. Oh, so what we should say first is that so Barry goes back in the past, changes something that will save his mom from dying. Then as he's going back to the future, there's a mysterious dark Flash character that he runs into in the Speed Force that pushes him out of the stream of the Speed Force into a year where younger Barry exists. And now he's stuck there. His powers are gone.
And so, young Barry doesn't have their powers yet because they haven't suffered the tragedy that puts them on that path.
The mystery is that he's trying to figure out who was that like pushed me out? And why am I stuck in this time? And what's going on, right?
Yes,
so
correct.
They want to recreate the accident that originally gave him his powers so that younger Barry can get the powers, because this happens to be the very day that this accident will happen, right? It's a lightning storm that hits some chemicals and he gets soaked in these electrocuted chemicals, which gives him super speed, right?
Yep. That makes sense. Standard stuff. Yeah. So yeah, they go on a little mission and do that together, and you know, powers recovered. I like the fun kind of training stuff that they're doing. They're trying to teach him, right now, Donna, you know, he loses his clothes and like little gags
and young
like
Barry,
in the apartment.
Yeah, young Barry's so impulsive that he's like not really listening, and like it's a fun dynamic, I think.
Yeah, he's just too excited. I also like that I mean, not that they added, but especially in the first part of this movie, they're like playing into like he needs to eat all the time because of the amount of
Absolutely.
calories that you burn, and so you're constantly seeing young Barry just like starving and stuffing his
Yeah.
teenager style
And that's
stuff.
something that that's something that's been touched on even in the CW show. That's a part of his character. And another thing is he can't get drunk, so he can just drink a ton of alcohol, but he metabolizes it so fast that he never really gets drunk.
Right.
So he just has a super high metabolism.
It's like an elf. He could outdrink Gimli probably.
Yeah. I'll probably mention CW Flash here and there to compare
Yeah.
it to this movie because I was a big fan of that show, obviously. I think we've mentioned it before as well, but I used to go over to Colin and Joe's old place here in LA when they lived together. And this was a few years ago, but I would go over after work and we would watch, new episodes week by week. It was, um, a view, we would all get together and it was
it's like
can't think
event
of the word.
television for you guys.
Yes,
You
event
set a date, you're
television.
going to show, like we used to do that with the good
Exactly.
seasons of The Walking Dead. You get everybody together. It's like, all right, this is our
There was
thing.
really only a few shows that we did that for. It was Prime Walking Dead, The Flash in the first couple seasons, and like Game of Thrones. But
Yeah.
it was up there with those shows for us when we were watching it. And I still think the season 1 of The Flash is like really good, and it does deteriorate over time in quality. And I did stop watching after like the 5th season, I think, and there's like 7 seasons total. It just ended too, by the way. Like the final season of The Flash just ended this past spring. A few
Wow.
weeks before this movie came out, actually. Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay.
shout out to Grant Gustin, the CW Barry Allen. It's hard to not compare these two iterations because of the two main live action iterations of the Flash in the past couple decades, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we get a lot of multiverse stuff here. We'll get into it when we get there, but it feels kind of weird that, there's not really representation for that version of the Flash in this movie when there easily could have been. And it's like, is that on purpose or is that keep the TV and stuff separate? But it's like you have an opportunity to at least show something of that,
And that's what I am going to want to talk about with the cameos, which we'll get to, but I feel like
when we hit that, yeah.
Yes, I'll hold off my thoughts until then. But jumping back to the plot of this movie, right?
They're learning the powers, right? And then
Yes.
it's like, okay, we need help. I know there's got to be a Batman here, right? There's got to be a Batman. So they go and looking for this universe's Batman is kind of the next step, right?
Well, first they're kind of they're figuring out. Oh, there's like older Barry Allen is figuring out like things are different in this universe. And I thought it was funny the way he first discovers like changes are happening. It's like they're talking about the movie Back to the Future, right? Time travel.
Oh, yes,
He's like, oh, Michael J. Fox, love Back to the Future. And they're like, Michael J. Fox? You mean Eric Stoltz?
Yep.
Obviously, Eric Stoltz, the star of Back to the Future. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? You're like, Michael J. Fox was in Footloose. And they're like, then he was like, no, Kevin Bacon was Footloose. And they're like, Kevin Bacon was in Top Gun. So that's one of the changes in this universe is that all these movies have different actors in them, which is very funny. And that is a reference to Back to the Future because Eric Stoltz was originally going to play Marty McFly.
They had shot for a couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, this isn't working.
They weren't liking his chemistry with Doc Brown, I think, so they switched him out for Michael J. Fox. So
yeah,
very funny reference there.
And it's a perfect reference to do it with a time travel movie. Like, oh, Back to the Future. No, your Back to the Future is different. Like, that's perfect.
Right. And then they start, Barry Allen's like trying to contact other members of the Justice League. Mm-hmm. Turns out in this universe, Aquaman was never born.
That's right. Yeah, he calls up Tamara Morrison.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thomas Curry, I think his name is.
Yeah, it's your wife an Atlantean queen. It's like there's a sight gag, It's like, okay.
So in this universe, Tamara Morrison never met the Queen of Atlantis and never had Jason Momoa.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder Woman, I forget what they said about her, but I don't think she exists in this universe or something.
Yeah, or she's
Superman doesn't exist.
Superman doesn't exist.
Batman does exist.
Cyborg is still in college playing football.
Right.
Just a regular football player. Victor Stone. Yep. Yeah. But Batman's real. Yeah, here.
Batman's real. So they're like, okay, that's good. Bruce Wayne, let's fucking go to his mansion.
I know where he lives.
Batman. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is kind of...
And this was a big selling point of the movie, of course, and a big marketing point that they hit on. I mean, this was in all the trailers, everything. Like, this is a main reason why probably a lot of people were even interested in seeing this movie, and that is the return of Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne,
Yep.
Batman.
He's trying to get nuts. You ever
1989.
dance with the devil in the pale moonlight, you know?
That's right. Now,
The original superhero film almost. Like, I'm not counting maybe the Superman movies
well,
with Christopher
Superman,
Reeves
Richard
too,
Donner,
but
Superman, yeah.
one of the early foundational superhero films, I
Definitely,
guess.
and definitely one of the first modern superhero. Even if it was 1989, I still feel like it has more in common with the superhero movies of the last 2 decades than it does like the Richard Donner like 70s. I
It
feel like a
feels more like
decade
a
between
Sam
that.
Raimi
Yeah,
Spider-Man than it does the Donner Supermans. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
and obviously those movies would continue with Joel Schumacher, and obviously Michael Keaton would be replaced by Val Kilmer, and then George Clooney,
Hmm.
and then we would get the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, blah blah blah. But
So many
obviously,
Batman, but only one
yeah.
Flash.
But Batman 1989, a lot of people's favorite Batman ever,
Hmm.
including like The Dark Knight and stuff like that, and Michael Keaton, a lot of people's favorite Batman and favorite Bruce Wayne ever, right? I don't know
Yeah.
about you. I like Michael Keaton a lot.
I think Michael Keaton's fine. I think he's good. I have recency bias, maybe. I really like Robert Pattinson's take on the character.
Yes. I like
I
Pattinson.
yeah.
I like Christian Bale. I thought he was also a good Bruce Wayne, but maybe not the best Batman.
Hmm.
Um,
And
but yeah,
Pattinson's a
Michael
great
Keaton.
Batman, but we'll have to see how he is as Bruce Wayne because he spent the entire first movie just
Yeah.
as Batman. We haven't seen Bruce Wayne really in Pattinson's, but I think I would
Again, I
put
like
him above Christian
Batfleck as
Bale.
well.
Keaton, I like him more than Christian Bale, I think, in hindsight.
Yeah.
I think it was just at the time, it was like, oh my God, this is perfect. But as they've kind of sat on the shelf, Keaton is very distinct. You know what I mean?
And I do like Keaton more than Val Kilmer or George Clooney. I'll say
Yeah.
that.
We got more Bat
Um,
Family in the George Clooney era and, Bat Nipples, but that's about it.
yeah, also those movies just weren't as good.
No,
And obviously you have Batman Returns with Danny DeVito as the Penguin. I also like that movie a lot.
that's good.
Um,
Now we
but
get
Michael
Catwoman.
Keaton,
So a lot of people
yeah,
are affection for this character. And yeah, again, that's a big part of the marketing. We're going to get, the old bat heads in the building.
yes. And as much as I do like Michael Keaton, here's my problem with the movie. And I thought I did like him in this movie, but to me, the casting of we're going to bring Michael Keaton back as Bruce Wayne in this parallel universe. It seems to me, it's like, why are you doing that? Right? It's really just to sell tickets. But what impact does it have on the story that Bruce Wayne is just this different guy that Barry Allen doesn't know or recognize? And obviously, they make references to the '89 Batman world with the mansion and the suits and the
Mm-hmm.
Batmobile. They mention his Alfred, but they really don't make that many direct references. Like, is this the same universe that '89 Batman existed in? Like, all
Yeah.
is it the same Gotham? Like, what's going on here?
Was
And
the
to
Jack
compare it to
Nicholson Joker there? Right. Was Danny DeVito
right,
Penguin
right,
there? Right.
right. Um, to compare it to No Way Home, it's like No Way Home uses its crossovers, like Green Goblin and stuff. They have a purpose within the story that makes sense. And you bringing in Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, it makes sense within the story. To
Mm-hmm.
me, the Michael Keaton Batman, he has no connection to Barry Allen, the Flash. So to me, it seems like a pretty naked about ticket
Right.
sales, basically a nostalgia bait pandering kind of thing.
Yeah, and we see that later too. I think they're just kind of throwing everything they can and see what sticks. Because also with Spider-Man, it's like that was 2002. When Toby was around, so it
Yeah,
was only like 20 years. This is 89. Like
yeah,
there's people like we're in our 30s ish, realm. So we have nostalgia of growing up with Toby's movie, and then they're back, right? But what age? We maybe have nostalgia because we were really really young with Michael Keaton, but beyond us,
yeah.
nobody really has seen that movie
I
probably.
mean, obviously, I
Younger
didn't watch it in theaters, but I did watch it on home
VHS.
video a lot, and I was a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, who is this really for? Obviously, it's not for kids. It's not for teenagers now. They don't give a fuck about Michael Keaton.
They've never
It's
seen
for
that
like
movie.
people in their 30s and 40s, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, what purpose does he fit in the story? Now, if you compare this to Flashpoint, the Flashpoint paradox, or the
Mm-hmm.
Flashpoint storyline, there's some differences when he goes into this parallel universe. Like, a big part of it is that Batman in this universe isn't Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne actually died in the alley instead of his parents, he was shot by the robber as a kid, but the
Right.
parents survived. So Thomas Wayne, his father, becomes Batman, and then his mother, Martha Wayne, goes crazy, goes insane from the grief, and becomes this world's Joker.
Right. Right.
So that's an interesting dynamic that's not at all in this movie.
No.
But
No.
think about this. So what if you had Michael Keaton, old man Michael Keaton in his 70s, have him play Thomas Wayne in this universe instead of Bruce Wayne that Barry Allen doesn't know? He could have been Thomas Wayne. Then you could have had that whole angle in the movie, which is a
Yeah.
big part of why I like Flashpoint Paradox. You have that really emotional scene at the end when he brings the note from his father to Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. There's a lot of emotional storytelling that could have been done there instead of just having Michael Keaton come back as Bruce Wayne, right?
Right, right, and they do make parallels to Barry and Bruce Wayne, where it's like Michael Keaton tells him, I lost my parents too, and that grief, whatever, whatever. But it's like you could play that card from a different angle with Thomas Wayne being like, yeah, all I do is grieve and like I
Yeah,
can't accept things the way they are, but really that's what we both need. You need to accept that your mom is gonna die, dude. It sucks, but we need to accept things the way they are because that's what
right.
defines us, right?
And I mean, you have already the Bruce Wayne, the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne that Barry knows, who's
Mm-hmm.
telling him those kind of things. We weren't meant to change the past, right? The past is our past trauma is what defines us. Obviously, he knows that very well.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love about Flashpoint Paradox is the contrast between Earth One's Bruce Wayne versus Thomas Wayne, who's much more kind of unhinged, and he doesn't have the no killing rule. Like he's
He's
just
running around
shooting
with
people with
guns. The
guns.
first thing you see is Batman going akimbo, right? And it's
Yeah,
like this is
yeah,
not the Bat we know. Yeah.
right.
And there's a lot there, but again, so now they're making a choice that directly affects the story effectiveness of a character, like you said, just to kind of make some money and cheap seats.
Right, but you could still cast him like Michael Keaton's the perfect age to play an older Thomas Wayne. Like it would make
But they want to
make
use
so
the
much sense.
'89 theme. They want to use the '89 Bat.
They could
Now
still
it's
do that.
all a nostalgia grab. They could,
Yeah,
they
but
could,
it's
but they
like they're
didn't.
referencing this older movie, but for it doesn't really serve any point in the story, right? That's kind of what bugs me about it, I guess. And
No,
that's
but
not to say I don't like Michael Keaton in this movie because I did like him as a supporting character. I thought he was a lot of fun. I mean, Michael Keaton's just like a cool guy, so it's easy to put him in your movie and you know have him add something. But it could have been more impactful to the story, I guess, is what I'm saying.
yeah, and it could have added kind of more branches to the multiverse. It puts more stuff out there.
Yeah.
It's like you don't consider like we get Sasha Kaye Supergirl, which is an interesting
Yes.
look at another side of a multiverse because normally that's a very positive character, and like this is a very grim, dark take on that. And then we could have had another thing with a Thomas Wayne. General audiences aren't familiar with that. Like, oh, there's a version of Batman where Bruce died and his dad becomes, that's a cool angle. And yeah, I agree. They
And
could
that's
have done
never
it.
been yeah, that's never been done in live action before. I think that would have been a really interesting angle to add to this movie. Instead, we just have older Michael Keaton fulfilling the same Bruce Wayne mentor role that Ben Affleck already filled in Barry's main universe. But it's fine. So we first meet him, he's got long hair, he's like very different than what you would expect. He's cooking spaghetti, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's sort of a retired Batman now. He retired because there's no more crime in Gotham City because he did his job too well, I guess.
Yeah, he's too good at punching those bad guys.
Yeah.
But he's kind of retired. They try to bring him up to speed, pun intended. And he explains, once they kind of discuss the multiverse and what's going on, he gives the spaghetti metaphor that I referenced up top, where it's like sometimes universes are stacked on top of each other, sometimes they split. But the main
Yes.
thing is he's saying, look, when you change the past, it's kind of a ripple effect, that change. And it's explained better in Flashpoint, but it expands in
Yes.
every direction through time, past, present, future. So like you can't just change the past and have it be linear. Like it's affecting everything.
Right. And every movie, every multiverse or time travel movie's got to have this exposition scene where they're explaining how the rules work in this universe, like the Spider Verse,
Mm-hmm.
Miguel O'Hara explaining it or whatever. But so in this, we get a spaghetti analogy, which actually I kind of liked because of the,
String theory.
yeah, it's easy to understand how these, once you get all these spaghetti kind of thrown together, it's like they have all these different intersections. So it's a very complicated thing, and that's why all these universes kind of cross over at different points, and it's really hard to predict.
Right.
Right.
But there's some things that are kind of always constants on each spaghetti. They're all made of wheat and, water or whatever. Like there's some things
they
like
have these
there's
nexus
generally an
points
Alfred and a bat. Yeah, that kind of thing.
when
There's a nexus
when the
point.
spaghettis cross, or a canon event, if you will, right?
Yeah, these are nexus points. And what do they call them? They called them something else in Loki. But we have all these different rules for multiverses. It's getting exhausting. But he eventually gets on board. Like he's like, if I'm going to help you, what do I do? And he's using the bat tech, and they're like, there's got to be a Superman then, or some shit, So now they're researching that, using his vast surveillance network. How can we find Superman? Like what the hell happened? And so that's kind of the next part here. But do they go after Superman and then try to get the powers back, or do they do that and then go after Superman? I'm trying to remember the order.
They go after Superman first because
that's right.
So if you remember, so like obviously in this universe they find out Clark Kent, or Kal-El, had never made it as a baby to Earth, and instead his pod was destroyed, but his cousin, who was sent as his protector, came instead, and that is Kara Zor-El, I think.
Yep,
aka
Kara Zor-El.
Supergirl, which again, we've had the CW Supergirl show, which did cross over with the CW Flash because they had some crossover events. But Supergirl in this movie, I do like her, to jump into that.
Yeah,
Sasha Kai, like you said, her first major film role, and I thought she did a really good job in the small amount that she's in this film, I guess you could say.
Yeah, she doesn't have a lot to do. It turns out, a Kryptonian craft did crash land in Earth, and they've just been keeping her prisoner basically the whole time.
Yes,
in
now
Russia,
this is another.
Right?
This is a change from the Flashpoint story. Yeah, she's being held by Russia. Now in the Flashpoint Paradox movie that we watched, it is Superman, Kal-El, but he's being held by the American government. And in that universe, instead of crash landing near Ma and Pa Kent, he caused like a big explosion in Metropolis.
Yeah.
And the government held him as a prisoner and were like doing experiments on him. So it's a little even darker in the Flashpoint Paradox, where it's like the U.S. government is like doing experiments on him. Instead, they just make it Russia. Russia's an easy villain right now, obviously.
It's an easy out, yeah. Which it gives me shades of The Boys and what they were doing with Soldier Boy, kind of sedating.
Yeah.
When I watched the Flashpoint Paradox movie, I'm like, that's probably where The Boys get that idea, or like this concept of how do you detain a super, and if he's out of the sunlight, that's a part of it too. They're depriving him of his energy source. But that Flashpoint Paradox Superman, he's all thin and like decrepit.
Yeah,
it's a really wild take. Yeah. It's a bold choice. So again, with the Thomas Wayne thing, but this is a fairly bold choice with Supergirl, and I do like her in the small bits that we.
It is, yeah, and she's kind of similar to that Superman character in Flashpoint Paradox. She's less like she was being like experimented on and abused and stuff.
She's in the dark, yeah.
Yeah, and this is also kind of references a little bit a famous Superman storyline, which is called Superman Red Sun, which is about if Kal-El had landed in Soviet Russia instead of America when he landed, and was raised by the USSR and was fighting for communism.
The champion of communism. Yeah, he has the sickle and hammer on his thing instead of the Superman sign.
So that's a fun like alternate
Elseworlds kind of run.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they got to bail her out, which they have Batman help them out. They're doing this bat plane, and there's a big fight them up, and man, the amount of mileage Keaton's Batman gets out of just grappling hooks, I find really, really funny. It's like he's the master. His tech is lower than other Batman's, right? Because it's 89, and I like how they're using the low tech effectively, like in this movie. It's kind of fun, just the amount of grappling hooks and little time bombs he's doing.
Right.
How much do you weigh?
Like he's 71 years old or whatever, so he's like limited in action. Like they do, I mean, he does some action, but it's like, how much do you expect a 70-year-old man to fight? But
there's stunt doubles happening in CG,
Yeah, but he's using his tactician part, because like obviously Batman is like the greatest tactician in the world. So he knows, he uses his brain in combination with his fighting, right?
Give him a week to plan and he could defeat anybody, right? That's the Batman thing, right?
Even Superman. Yeah, he's got contingencies for every member of the Justice League, how to take them down if they went rogue or turned evil. Yeah.
Which is pretty cool, actually. You got to cover your bases.
Yeah.
But yeah, they go in there, they punch him up, they eventually free her. I do like how much do you weigh? He has to set the charge so they can launch up the elevator shaft. Like, there's some nice little touches here.
That's a nice detail, yeah.
Yeah, that I do like. And then they do bail her out. Oh no, you put your hands up, but she's exposed to sunlight. Now it's Supergirl time. And we've seen that in the trailer.
Yeah.
She's kind of in the hospital suit doing
She
a
needs to be
thing.
powered by our yellow sun.
Which is similar
And yeah.
to the Flashpoint. You get him outside and
Exactly.
he's starting to feel powerful. Okay, friends, you're my friend. Like there's parallels to that
yeah.
big time. But anyway, so we go back to the Batcave and it's like, okay, here's what's going on. Supergirl, Zod is back because there's no
Yes.
Superman. So Zod is now becoming, he's like his tertiary threat. I don't think they used him well, but Zod is just there.
No, it's just
and
to get a big
theoretically, he's
action
just going to
scene
take
in the
over
third
because
act.
of no Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're flashing back to Man of Steel, the Zack Snyder Superman movie that kicked off this whole universe to begin with back in, I believe, 2015.
Right. Which then begs the question, does that mean the 89 Batman continuity leads up to the Man of Steel continuity? You know what I mean? It's all crazy.
It makes no sense.
None of it makes sense. Yeah, so this is just a separate
just
fucking
89
universe.
Batman existing in this universe. Yeah.
Wow.
Obviously, this is a separate universe where Kal-El it died as a baby, so there's no one to protect humans from Zod, except now Supergirl. So they're like, okay, Zod is like going to kill everybody. And again, this is a little bit different, but it serves the same purpose as in Flashpoint Paradox. They have a huge war going on between the Atlanteans and the Amazons, right? Aquaman and Wonder Woman, who had this whole affair. Wonder Woman kills
Mira.
the Queen of Queen Mira, and then obviously they're like crazy evil versions of themselves in this world where they're just like killing people left and right, which is part of the fun of
they kill Lex Luthor and stuff. Like spoilers. Yeah, it's a good movie though. It's pretty wild. Yeah.
Well, there's one scene where Wonder Woman hangs Steve Trevor with the lasso of truth, right?
Yeah,
so it's kind of edgy stuff like that, but it's fun for an alternate universe.
It is pretty edgy. There's a lot of dark. It's PG-13, but yeah, they're really going for it. I didn't expect for it to be that dark.
Wonder Woman also just murders Billy Batson, in kid form, right? Shazam.
Oh yeah, the Shazam kids.
Yeah,
they cut away, but she just kills him. Yeah, that's
there's
wild.
a sound effect. Yeah, and then and Aquaman is equally like bloodthirsty, just killing people, kills Lex Luthor and Deathstroke at one point. But they're basically starting World War III in Europe. So the Flash and Batman in that story have to figure out how to stop this war.
There's a WMD that he's got, so it's like that's a ticking clock element. Oh shit, the world's gonna end.
In this movie, Zod taking over the world is kind of serves the same purpose as like a big climactic thing that they have to stop from and save the world, right?
Yeah, and if you're, as Michael Shannon says, banging all your action figures together, that's certainly the route that they took. Okay, well, we had a movie with Zod. We can get Michael Shannon back for half a day, and Michael Shannon stuff.
Yeah, I did read some stuff he said in interviews where he's like, this movie, I was happy to come back, but it's like didn't do much for me, like because it wasn't really about Zod. Like, Man of Steel was like in his opinion, a better story where Zod was a more important part. And here again, he's just a sort of a means to an end for a plot device.
Yeah. And we just need some people to fight at the end. Yeah, we just need people to fight at the end. And I'm with you. I like the first 2/3 more than the final third, although there's bits to like if you're eating popcorn and you turn your brain off. But generally speaking, it's a lot stronger, even though I would have preferred Thomas Wayne. I do like the chemistry with Keaton and Ezra Miller's Barry's. And Sasha Kaye, and even when he's like, all right, what do you need me to help you? You want to get your powers back now? And they're going to do, again, from the Flashpoint Paradox, put a bunch of chemicals around me and shock me with lightning.
Which is basically, exactly how they do it in Flashpoint, where he's in this electric chair and he just gets zapped, and Batman's
even
like,
the lever that they use, the lever mechanism is directly from the Flashpoint Paradox.
The only difference in Flashpoint Paradox is he tries it the first time and it doesn't work, and he just gets like horribly burned all over his body. And then he's like, I need to do it again. And Thomas Wayne is like, you're fucking insane. Like, you're going to kill yourself. But then it does work, and he's able to heal his body through his regenerative Speed Force powers, of course.
And then the alternate to this that I do prefer here is they try it, and it doesn't really work. And then Supergirl's like, I'm going to fucking help you. I'll take you up. And I liked her carrying him up, to get electrocuted one more time.
That was a good change.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in the chair, so she lifts him up into the sky or whatever to get zapped by lightning, right?
Yep. And then this time it works. We're back in action, baby. He starts to heal his wounds. We know that we're good. Barry 2 has to make a flash suit out of an old Batman suit. I made it on colors and everything.
Saws
Like some
off
of that
the
stuff is
ears.
funny. Yeah, it's more
It is,
flexible.
yeah,
Like yeah,
good.
that stuff is working.
And Supergirl, I did really like her in this movie. I wouldn't mind if she got her own solo movie, because I think it's an interesting character that could be explored more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how she'll fit into this new DCU. I hope that if people like her as the character, they'll continue to use her, right? Because you could easily explain that she exists in this reality, but you could also have a new. Obviously, they're going to have a new Kal-El as well.
Right.
So
Man, she's like the main thing I want from this movie to go into the
yeah,
continued DC universe. Like
she
I
was
think
really good.
she's really interesting. She's really good. I like that it's a different take on Superman or Supergirl. Like it's fresh. I don't know. I just think she did a great job. So yeah.
Yeah.
With limited
And
opportunity.
right. And by the way, with the new Superman, I do know some casting rumors that
Oh.
right now James Gunn is like considering 3 different actors. 2 of them I'm not familiar with them, but one of them is Nicholas Holt.
Huh.
So
Nicholas Holt
that
for
would be an interesting
Superman.
choice for Superman. He doesn't have
Beast.
the typical look, maybe like he's a little
But he's got a Christopher
thinner
Reeve
body type.
to him though. Yeah.
Yeah.
That boyish kind of charm almost. Huh.
Yeah. The thing with
Interesting.
Nicholas Holt is he's a good actor that we like, so it would be good to have like Henry Cavill, not the greatest actor in the world. Like I thought he was good as Superman, but he doesn't have the most like acting depth to him. I think Nicholas Holt is a much better actor.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think he could bring something interesting to the Superman role.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm here for that. I love the menu, love Mad Max, you know.
Yeah,
He's
going
a
from
good actor.
Beast to Superman.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
Switch.
So yeah.
So now
we get a big action scene.
We got to go stop Zod, and they throwing out
in a
everything.
big gray field. We're gonna have this big action scene, which there's some questionable effects, maybe you could say.
Yeah,
some of it looked
CG
okay to
not
me.
great.
Some of it, I mean, we can hit Marvel for having some questionable effects sometimes, and
True.
I feel like this movie falls into it and has some really bad effects sometimes, but also some fun action, I guess, in this scene.
I did hear somebody describe the final battle landscape as like a Dragon Ball Z like fight zone. It's just like an empty, barren wasteland as far as the eye can see. Yeah, it's very like
it's
okay.
not super visually interesting. Like it is just like a gray, barren field of sand or whatever.
There's no mountains, no features in the background. It's just barren. Maybe some debris from some vehicles here and there, but there is nothing out there. Yeah, it's
basically 2 Flashes, a Batman, and a Supergirl facing a bunch of super strong Kryptonian soldiers, right?
You got a space giant, you got Zod, and then just random
Zod's
Kryptonian
like
soldiers.
lieutenants that have like their own abilities, I guess. Yeah,
they're just archetype, big one, wily one. They're whatever.
Yeah.
They're throwaway villains basically. But everybody's got to have something to do. We get some interesting stuff with the berries working together. They go foot to foot and create like a cyclone thing, and they're
But again, this is all really just a diversion from the main, climax of the movie, which is that Barry realizes that he caused this all by saving his mom. And so this is where, if we can compare it to like Spider-Verse,
yeah. Go ahead.
Just in the way that the stance that it has in canon events, like, okay, so your mom died in your past, that defines you as a character and also the universe we live in, that if you go back and change that, it's just going to mess things up irrevocably. So the lesson here is that you can't change your past. You need to live with it. And so, sorry, mom, you got to die, right?
Yeah.
Is what this movie, it's the stance of this movie versus Spider-Verse, where Miguel O'Hara tells Miles Morales, oh, you need to let your dad die in order for the universe not to be destroyed. And Miles says, nah, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm Spider-Man. I'm going to protect my loved ones. So it's complete opposite stance, right?
Yeah,
so what is the right stance? Miguel O'Hara is kind of the villain of that movie, taking the same stance that in this movie they're saying is the correct stance. So I just think that's interesting.
I think the way they approach the question is equally interesting here. I mean, for all the weird CG and overdoneness of the battle, we get to a point where they're losing, and they just keep losing. They lose Batman, they lose Supergirl, they are losing, and so they're like, we got to go back in time. We can just go back in time, right? And then they try, and then Barry too, younger Barry, he keeps trying and he keeps getting injured, and then older Barry's like, look, you got to stop, like it's not gonna work, we need to just accept it, we fucking did this, we just got to let mom die, I fucked up, I'm sorry. And he's trying to talk him out of it. He keeps getting more debris out of him, and then what's our big reveal here? What do we learn through this?
Well, that's younger Barry, by doing this time loop, keep going back, trying to fix things, it doesn't work. Like you said, he's getting more and more like bits of metal stuck in his skin and stuff, and he becomes corrupted, and he becomes the Dark Flash, this figure that we saw at the beginning of the movie that originally pushed Barry out of the time stream. So we see how that's all wrapped around, and young Flash is now Dark Flash, and older Flash has to convince him not to, go down this path anymore.
Yeah, because it leads to nothing but self-harm. Like you become a monster, right, if you continue this, right? And I kind of started this in motion, and ultimately, it's an interesting theme because he's watching himself not learn the lesson that he's finally learned. It's like, I should never have tried to change anything, right? And he's trying to tell his younger self, hey, if you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? It's like, don't try to fucking change the shit,
it's the butterfly effect.
Right? Yeah, and they have that speech that in the beginning, giving the whatever to acknowledge what I can't change, or whatever. Yeah, that Sojourner's Prayer or whatever.
Right. Except with the things that you can't change,
cannot
give you the
change.
Strength to fix the things that you can change.
So yeah, it's look it up, normies. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. It's like sometimes shit just happens and you have no control over it. So he finally accepts that, and as he's accepting it, Reverse Flash, is that correct? No. Negative Flash. No, am I getting the name right?
Reverse Flash, but he's not in this movie, is he?
No. So what's this one called?
Dark Flash.
Dark Flash. The names are just so good.
But they just are calling him that. He's not called that in the movie, but I guess
no. But he's dark. But anyway, it's an evil, corrupted version of the Flash, and then young Barry actually sacrifices himself for original timeline Barry. Correct? That's what ends up happening. That's right.
So Dark Flash is kind of a reference to, I think, a character named Savitar. So in the CW show, again, there's a different like big villain every season. So the first season it was Eobard Thawne, Reverse Flash. Then it was Zoom, which was another speedster rival. Then it was Savitar, which was another speedster rival of Barry Allen. But the big twist of Savitar, spoiler alert for this CW show that's a few years old now at this point.
Concluded, yeah.
Savitar turns out to, and Savitar has this like crazy suit, and he's voiced by Tony Todd. So sounds very different than Barry Allen. But the reveal is that Savitar is Barry Allen from the future, who is evil because Iris West died and it made him evil. So now he's like trying to like torment his past self. So
okay, fair enough.
It's similar to Dark Flash also being Barry Allen, right? The reveal of it, he's a time traveling Barry Allen. So it kind of reminded me of that. I don't know if it's a direct like reference to that. But,
I think it's just they're kind of taking some attributes of these plot threads and let's put them all on one guy. But man, this temporal coliseum looks like dog shit. All the CG in here looks terrible because we start to see the universes colliding as we're learning that you can't change everything. The universes are kind of collapsing in, and we get these glimpses. This is all kind of the cameos, if we want to run through some of them, with Christopher Reeve, Superman, and we kind of go through all these eras.
Yeah, this was one of my least favorite parts of the movie, right? I don't like this at all. It made no sense, and also is just like pandering nostalgia bait. But we get Christopher Reeve Superman. We get also the Supergirl of his era, which I don't even know the actress.
No.
We get, I think, a brief glimpse of George Reeve, who was the first Superman back in the 40s in the black and white era.
Reeve, that's right.
There's George Reeve, and then there's Christopher Reeves. Just a coincidence that the first two Superman actors were named very similarly.
Reeve and Reeves, yeah.
But George Reeve died mysteriously in the 40s, and they made a movie about it called Hollywoodland, if you've ever seen that, where Ben Affleck plays George Reeve in that movie. So it's a little kind of funny how that works, right?
Yeah, wild.
We got a brief glimpse of George Reeve. We got, I guess, a brief glimpse of Jay Garrick, which was maybe Teddy Sears, who played him in the CW show. So you get a brief glimpse of him with the silver bucket hat on.
Oh,
so he's the Silver Age Flash from the 70s, Jay Garrick, who was a character in the CW show. And Who else do we
going through
get?
the eras. Yeah, well, what the biggest surprise, which my smooth brain was excited in the moment, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, this is really dumb. Mostly because everybody in these is all CGI, right? So it's like we couldn't even fucking get anybody to show up,
It's
and
very
that's when I
weird.
was like, this is dumb. So, but this reveal, I was like, oh my god, Kevin Smith has got to be going crazy right now.
Right. So we get Nicolas Cage as Superman fighting a giant spider. Now, normies,
Yes.
I'll explain this reference for you if you're not in the loop, because I don't know who exactly this movie is for, but except for the the people that will get this reference, I don't know how many of them will. But
Yeah.
basically, Nicolas Cage at one point in time was going to play Superman. There's screen test of him wearing a suit that you can look up on YouTube or whatever.
He
He's going to
has
have long hair.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be very weird. But Kevin Smith was in talks to direct, and he was talking to a guy named John Peters, who is the guy that owns the film rights to Superman, or did at the time. I don't know if I think he was a producer on. I think he's still a producer on like Superman movies. But John Peters, a very interesting, eccentric guy who was once married to Barbara Streisand. If you've seen the movie Licorice Pizza, he's played by Bradley Cooper in that movie. Have you seen that at all?
No, but
Good
Bradley
movie.
Cooper, our favorite little elf man in Dungeons and Dragons.
Bradley Cooper played John Peters, and he was just this crazy guy who was married to Barbara Streisand. He then became like a film producer and somehow got the Superman film rights and was in charge of that. And so Kevin Smith met with him, and he's a very weird guy who had some weird requests, but the main one is that he was like, Superman needs to fight a giant spider in the third act. And Kevin Smith was like, okay, I guess. I mean, that's a weird request, but I don't give a shit. Sure, he can fight a giant spider. That movie never got made, obviously, but a couple years later, a little movie called Wild Wild West came out, also produced by John Peters. And in that movie, they fight a giant mechanical spider in the end, right?
In the third act. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a reference to this stand-up story Kevin Smith would tell about being involved in this guy's obsession with having Superman fight a giant spider for no reason. And when I saw long hair Nicolas Cage fighting a spider, at first I was like, wow, I can't believe they fucking did that. But at the same time, you can't get Nick Cage to show up for one day, put him in the suit. Like, come on. But everything was
Nicolas
so
Cage
CG.
is still alive, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, you can still like Christopher Reeve,
and he really wanted to be Superman. Give him his one chance back in the suit. He gave it to Keaton,
Nicolas Cage is like such a big Superman fan that he named his son Kal-El, I believe.
Yeah.
He's a huge comic book fan. But the controversialness of like the Christopher Reeve, R.I.P., is passed away a few years ago. And they're reanimating, dead actors that didn't consent to be in this movie via CG. That's a little questionable, right? I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
And, Star Wars kind of started it with, obviously, Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher died in between installments, so that's understandable. But even in Rogue One, you had Grand Moff Tarkin, like, that guy didn't, that guy's not alive. I forget his name, but he's a very well-known British actor that
I'll pull it up.
Passed away long before the Rogue One came out, and they recreated him with CG. So it is questionable because Peter Cushing, that's right.
That's right.
And maybe their estate signed off on it. I don't know, but it still seems it's a little icky to me.
It's weird, and it's very Uncanny Valley in that sequence, and they're trying to play this. We saw in the Spider-Verse, like, here's every canon event, and we see Toby, and and it's like that all works. They're showing us footage from the movies, right? But here we recreated, like, you could have just showed footage from these series.
It was their attempt to do that, but
they did the way they Henry Cavill, like just the back of him or some shit.
Right. I should mention there's only a couple. So we didn't talk about our theater experiences of watching this, but I went to a matinee on the Saturday, afternoon. Decent sized crowd in the audience, not totally sold out, but like 2/3 full at least. And there was I think there was 3 moments where the crowd had a audible reaction to something on screen, right?
Yeah.
And the first,
baby in a microwave.
well, there was some other than some laughs and stuff, because there were some good jokes, right?
Yeah.
But the first one was the first time Michael Keaton shows up in the suit, right? Not his first appearance where he has long hair and stuff,
All
but when he
scraggled.
comes back and he's in the suit and he says, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts."
Mm-hmm.
Some people clapped in my theater. I was like, okay, why are we clapping
Is that really?
for Michael
That's been in
Keaton?
the
But
trailers. We've seen the
yeah.
line. Yeah.
And then the next one was, well, when Christopher Reeve showed up, he first shows up, he's like silhouetted, so you can't see his face. I think
Mm-hmm.
some people actually thought it was Henry Cavill, maybe,
Oh, right.
but they kind of cheered when he showed up, and then it was Christopher Reeve, and people were like, "What? What's going on?" And then Nicolas Cage, I think, got some laughs, and then people clapped at the end of the movie, which was also weird. Like when the credits came up, people were clapping. Is this really a clap-worthy movie? I don't know.
Yeah, I
But
don't know. Especially as we talk about the actual ending when we get there. I don't know if it's
but
clap-worthy.
yes, and the number one biggest moment that my audience had was something that we'll get to at the very end of the movie.
Oh, wow.
I don't want to jump
Okay.
ahead yet. But,
It could be one of two things, and I don't like either of them if they reacted
no,
to either of those things.
I was surprised. It was literally the biggest reaction in the movie.
Jeez. Okay.
But
So yeah, we know that everyone's, the universes are collapsing. We can't do this, Barry. We can't do this. Barry 2 sacrifices himself to save Barry 1 from anti-Flash, Nega Flash. I don't know. And Dark Flash. And then Barry 1's like, all right, we're going to go back and we're going to put everything back to fucking normal. We can't be messing with time. And then he goes back and he's getting ready to say goodbye to his mom for one last time. And she doesn't know that it's him. He's like, gives him a hug till he's kind of bummed out that he thinks he's a stranger at this point because he's a 10-year-old child at this point in the timeline. I thought that was working great. When he's getting his final hug, I think all of this is working. It's just what he does after that pisses me off.
Again, the best part of the movie is like the emotional core of the storyline with Barry and his mom and all that.
Yeah.
That's what worked best for me. And I do want to shout out, first of all, Ron Livingston, who plays his dad, and the actress that plays his mom, Maribel Verdú. Now, you may not be familiar with this actress. She's a Spanish actress, hasn't done that many English language films, but I was surprised to see her because I do know her from a movie that I have a big connection with, which is the movie called Y Tu Mama Tambien, which is a Alfonso Cuarón movie that's one of my all-time favorite movies. It was 2001, and that starred Diego Luna, Gael Garcia Bernal, and Maribel Verdú, about two teen best friends that go on a road trip with an older woman, and Maribel Verdú is that older woman, and they both have like a crush on her. And it's a road trip movie. It's a coming of age movie, and I'm a huge fan of it. So shout out to that movie, Y Tu Mama Tambien.
Yeah, and shout out to our pasta making comic book superhero moms out there. Thanks Aunt May and Spider-Man and Barry's mom.
Maribel Verdú was a very interesting choice for this movie because she is a very Spanish, she has a very strong accent, which is never part of Barry Allen's. Like Barry Allen's mom has always been played by like a generic white lady. So it was an interesting choice for this movie. I don't know why they did it specifically, but I thought she was great, and Ron Livingston was also great as the dad as well.
No, the emotional scenes between them, even when like he first shows up in the new timeline and he's figuring it out. She's like, "Oh, you cut your hair," and like he's wearing clothes off the wire or whatever. But there's you could see her care for him, even if he looks a little weird and he's just still taken aback that he's seeing his mother again after all these years. Like that stuff is all great. So the grocery store, I'm all here for it, and it's like, wow, you really have to accept that, like. But it is a goodbye for her, but he can't resist one last time making a change. And this is where the whole movie falls apart for me.
Yeah, well, it's mixed messages, right? Because they're saying, can't change the past, you just got to accept it. But you can change it a little bit to help out your dad, right? So what does he do? So originally he's like, okay, if mom just had an extra can of tomatoes, she wouldn't have had to send dad back to the store, and she wouldn't have died. He would have been there to like protect her or whatever. So that's the original change, is that he puts an extra can of tomatoes in her cart. So he takes it back out at the end, but he can't resist. So his dad has an alibi that he was in the store at the time, but he was wearing a hat that covers his face on the security camera. So they can't prove conclusively that his dad didn't murder his mom. So the change that he makes is he makes it so that the security camera can see his dad's face,
I think he
his
puts the
dad.
cans on a higher shelf, so he looks up.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
moves the cans on a higher shelf, so he looks right at the camera, and that's the
He's
solution.
not able to save his mom, but he is able to save his dad from being in prison falsely.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it's mixed messages, right? Because you're saying, well, you can't change it, but you can change it for your dad, I guess.
Can with a can of tomatoes. You can change
Right.
it, I guess. Yeah. So that's the mixed messaging, and that's why I get frustrated. And I hear that there's like several endings for this movie. Like there's endings where Sasha Kaye and Keaton are at the courthouse in suits, like we're cheering for you, buddy. And like there's different endings because this thing has been such a shit show. And like scenes were filmed at the courthouse with those characters, but in this ending we get, oh, your dad's exonerated, all charges dropped, he's a free man. Get a phone call from our old friend Bruce Wayne. Ring, ring, Bruce Wayne. I'll be there in a minute.
I'm pulling up right now. Right?
Oh,
Gets out of the car, and this is the moment, the biggest moment that my audience had. He gets out of the car. It's not Ben Affleck. Who is it?
It's not Michael Keaton.
George Clooney, right?
That's right.
Not,
ER himself. George
Clooney from Batman and Robin. Obviously the best Batman movie.
True.
But my audience had a visible reaction where people were laughing and like clapping and stuff. And I kind of laughed too, just out of surprise. But I was like, wait, what does this mean for the movie? So wait, Ben Affleck's gone, but now George Clooney is Bruce Wayne in this universe? Like what?
Okay. Yeah, Michael Keaton's gone. Yeah, what is going on here? So, yeah, that's the big reveal. He's now in a universe where the only thing we know that's different is his dad is out of jail, and we know it's George Clooney Batman. But this George Clooney Batman knows him as the Flash, so...
Yeah, so he's like playing the same Bruce Wayne that Ben Affleck played, but he just looks like George Clooney.
Yeah, or we'll have to see what other events transpire differently. But he has become the Flash and become associated with Bruce Wayne in some way, presumably. Yeah. But
I mean,
that's
this
the big
may
ending,
never get
really.
a follow-up in terms of like
this
movie may never get a follow-up.
And that's why it's so confusing, especially if we just talk the last post-cred before we go to final thoughts, because I want to discuss over there, where does this sit? How did it perform? Things like that. Because it's very strange because we have George Clooney, new shit set up. We established there was a timeline where Arthur Curry was never born in our post-creds. We get Barry Allen and Arthur Curry, Jason Momoa coming out from a bar.
That's right.
And
it's comedic
like,
scene.
Yeah, I can't get drunk. Jason Momoa is very drunk. They're trying to get him home. Falls in a puddle. I'll sleep right here. Sell my ring. It's Atlantean. Go get me some beer. Yeah, silly stuff. But it's like, so where does this go? Because I thought you were supposed to be Lobo, you know?
And we know Aquaman 2 is still coming out. So,
yeah,
I don't know. But I think all these Justice League cameos were just like, hey, remember these actors? Like, this may be the last time you ever see them in this role. You know, Wonder Woman, Ben Affleck, Jason Momoa. We're going to see him at least one more time as Aquaman. But to me, this is just like a funny comedic scene where there's like, can we get Jason Momoa in for one day for like an after the credits scene?
And they showed up actually in person for the Peacemaker thing too, Momoa and Ezra. You know, Henry Cavill wasn't there and Gal Gadot weren't there for real.
Wasn't there three? Wasn't it him and... Wasn't it Jason Momoa, Ezra Miller, and someone else? I forget.
Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot's characters were there, but they were the only two that spoke.
They weren't really. Okay,
Yeah. So
again, everything's up in the air with this DC universe right now. We know we're getting new Superman, new Batman. Most, if not all, characters from this current iteration of Justice League are going to be recast. Mm-hmm. Jason Momoa might play a different character in the DC universe. Who knows? You know?
Yeah, it's confusing as all hell. The messages are so mixed, much like the final act of the movie and the last thing that Flash does. So let's try to untangle some of this spaghetti here as we jump into final thoughts right after this, talking the Flash and the future of the DC, EU, who knows? Zoom.
That's right.
We're back. I'm running in a weird, slow way. I can't quite get up to speed right now. I did enjoy that when he's like, why don't I have my powers? And he's running like a freaking jagaloon, bumping into stuff.
Funny.
But aside from other gags here, what is this? Why is it? Right, again, it's the last vestige of this kind of DCEU that's dying, you know?
Yes.
So if we want to look at box office, it's like, I understand why it seems to be not doing well. Spoiler, because it's set up to failure. It's got a controversial star. It's a universe no one's going to invest in, right?
Yeah.
So where are we at box office-wise, and what do you think is kind of some of the factors?
Box office is not looking good. It's
worse than Black Adam,
first weekend. Right? Worse than Black Adam. Not quite as bad as Shazam, Fury of the Gods, which was let's be clear, one of the biggest box office bombs for a comic book movie ever made.
It costs less than this though.
It costs less, but it's made like an insanely it's made like $30 million at this. It's like insanely low. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's like really bad. So that was bad. Now this is a bomb. It came in below its lowest projections in terms of like what they were expecting. So it's pretty much a disaster. And I think it is a
DOA.
combination of reasons between the Ezra Miller stuff, like you said, the universe being up in the air. No one really cared about this movie because there's no reason to care about. Like, if you're going to change everything about this universe, then why would we want to see this movie? Like, I wanted to see it because I like the Flash, but he's not exactly the most popular character. And again, the way they marketed it, they barely marketed it as a Flash movie. It was a look at this Michael Keaton cameo and look at Supergirl and like look at all that and look, we got Zod back and all this stuff. Like, that's not a reason to go see the movie. Like, that's why audiences aren't turning out, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and again, it's just, why am I going to read the final chapter of a book that's never the most current chapter, let's say, of a book that's never going to have an ending? Like that universe is dead. It's done. So why
And
pay my money to see something that means nothing, right?
Yeah. Obviously, they were going for a No Way Home thing. They saw how well No Way Home, because people are like, oh, Toby's back, Andrew Garfield's back, like Green Goblin, fucking Willem Dafoe, let's go.
Right.
Like, people love that. They're like, okay, cameos and like bullshit nostalgia bait. That's what people want. But the reason it worked in No Way Home, again, is that like it fit into the story in a way that made sense. You can't just throw random cameos into a movie and expect people to just like clap like seals, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what they wanted.
again, the Michael Keaton thing, just if he was playing Thomas Wayne, like we said earlier, like I would have been so much more interested in this movie. Supergirl was fun again. Like, I think she did a great job.
Leave that the same way. That's fine.
Yeah. But again, like I think it was mismarketed. Like, they didn't know. Obviously, it was a huge task of like, we need to sell this movie somehow with all the controversy behind it with Ezra Miller, all the problems it had in production. So it was a huge task to be like, how are we going to market this movie? But I think they went about it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And with the camera, like I was trying to think of an analogy of how to describe it. It's like No Way Home, if instead of these other Spideys and Spidey villains, they had like you know, like Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk in a cameo in No Way Home. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's just another Marvel character from like an older era. And that's what these Christopher Reeves and stuff felt like to me. It's like, why, you know?
Yeah. Superman doesn't really exist in this movie. Like, so why are we getting Christopher Reeve incursions? Why are we getting like I get the old, Buckethead Flash stuff. Sure, like that's a part of this. And then even have Zod here, it's like that's not a Flash villain. It's a Superman villain. What are we doing?
Yeah. Flash has his own whole rogues gallery, just like Batman has a rogues gallery. Flash has obviously the Reverse Flash, not in this movie. And this is a problem that I had as a Flash fan. Like, why are you not using Flash characters and Flash villains? And the other thing is, if you're going to have cameos, why not have Grant Gustin, the CW Flash, come in? Why not have John Wesley Shipp, the original Flash from the 90s, who also plays Barry Allen's dad in the CW show?
Wow.
Why not have those two guys? That would be like your Toby and your Andrew from Spider-Man. Instead, you have Michael Keaton, a totally different franchise. Like, I don't know. Could have been
different
better.
universe, different era. Yeah. And again, it doesn't. I guess it never really had a chance because when it was incepted, I'm sure it served a very, very different purpose in their business plan going forward, right? And then by the time we have this leadership change, it has to just morph into this abomination, to reference a Marvel villain. But it's like, what is it? It can't serve any function because its original purpose for existing is deleted. So it's going to be unsatisfying no matter how you look at it.
Yeah. And to give context of the troubled history of this production of this movie was first announced before the CW show started airing, a show that ran for 7 or 8 seasons and ended before this movie came out. This movie was announced before that show started. So it's been that long since it was announced. It finally came out. They went through different directors, finally landed on Andy Muschietti, who I don't hate as a director. Like, he did It Part 1 and 2. And now, after literally as this movie was coming out, was announced to be directing Batman, the Brave and the Bold, in the new James Gunn universe, which is going to come out concurrently with Matt Reeves' The Batman franchise, which is a different, like an Elseworlds type thing. So we're going to have two live action Batmans at the same time. And Andy Muschietti, director of this movie, will be directing the DCU first Batman movie, Batman the Brave and the Bold.
I don't think they know what they're doing over there. You know?
Yeah. Well, this is surprising because this is James Gunn announcing it, and I trust James Gunn almost more than I trust anyone involved in like comic book movies right now because obviously he did a great job with Guardians of the Galaxy. I liked, I love Suicide Squad, love Peacemaker, so I trust what he's doing. And he is trying to fix a situation that is like very difficult to fix. But the way I don't know, the way he praised this movie, the way
Tom Cruise said it was the best thing ever, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Warner Brothers completely doubled down on like, we're going to market this movie as one of the greatest comic book movies ever made, which to me was like a huge misstep because it's just not. Like, it's not one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. It's not
pretty
terrible.
all right.
It's not Suicide Squad 2016, but it's not like an all-time great comic book movie. It's an okay, entry into this DCEU that's dying. But the way they market it, like James Gunn was like, I've seen it. It's like so good, blah, blah, blah. Love Andy Muschietti. Like you said, Tom Cruise, they showed it to Tom Cruise. He liked it. Like, I don't know, man. Like the way they market it is just so weird.
Yeah.
And now we have this huge bomb,
Yeah, well, you market it. It's the best thing since sliced bread, and then the reviews come out early too. You show it to fans early, and they're like, "This wasn't that great," and it's like, "Well, what was all this marketing?"
Yeah, at best, mixed reviews. A lot of people are very negative about it. There are some people that like it.
Rotten.
Yeah, I think audience score may be a little higher than critic score. I don't remember.
Oh, generally that's the case.
Yeah, but are Snyder fans going to like this movie? Not really. I mean, it's not really like the Snyder DC movies that much.
No.
They're still, they still want the David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad or whatever. They're still complaining about that.
Oh, jeez.
So who is this movie really for? Is it for Flash fans? Not really, because you don't have Reverse Flash or Captain Cold or any of Flash's Rogues Gallery. You got some Iris West, which was nice. We first saw Iris West in the Snyder cut. And I still think that the Flash's role in the Snyder cut is the best this Flash ever got, right?
Yeah.
And the speed, the slow motion like speed effects in that movie were really good, better than this movie.
Yeah.
So
his busted leg and he's trying to outrun this shit like that was done really, really well actually in the Snyder cut. And this is just it's kind of all right.
Yeah, it's all right. I like the beginning. Like he got a really good scene in the beginning where he's saving all those babies and stuff. Like that was fun. But like you said, the ending stuff with the multiverses looked terrible. Like, just look bad.
Yeah, and again, it really doesn't have any focus. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't own up to its own lesson because it's just like, oh, don't change anything. We're changing it.
Yeah.
I guess that's this movie in a nutshell. Measures. We're just going to keep changing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It really fell apart in the ending for me. And, I'm worried about, that's been 2 bombs in a row now for DC. I'm super worried about our guy, Miguel.
Man,
Blue Beetle.
Yeah,
like,
Blue Beetle.
That movie's like, maybe people, like, the trailer looks fun. Like, I want to see it. But Blue Beetle is not a well-known character at all. He's like a C or D tier DC character. Again, I like him. He had a good role in Young Justice, which is an animated show that came out a few years ago that I really like. Jaime Reyes, interesting character. And, I want our guy to do well. I want his movie to do well, but man, it's not looking good. To introduce a new character now between universes. Yeah.
And James Gunn has now said that that's his first superhero in his universe.
Yes. We said
Superman is his first movie in his
That's
universe.
Right. So Blue Beetle's the first DCU character, but Superman Legacy is the first DCU movie. So he's just kind of, again, in this no man's zone between 2 timelines.
Yeah. And then we have 2 Batman timelines happening simultaneously. It's like, what are you doing? You're being either only do and Joker shit's happening too. So it's like there's already 4 different timelines in the DC fucking scope. It's a little much.
Yeah.
I'm thinking they still have
Joker 2 with Lady Gaga
Mm-hmm.
as Harley Quinn. That's going to be interesting. You've got Matt Reeves' Batman 2,
Which I'm
you've got
excited
Batman the
for.
Brave and the Bold. Yeah. So it's interesting. I hope DC can figure things out. I mean, a lot of live action comic book movies have been underperforming this year. Ant-Man,
Mm-hmm.
Shazam 2, one of the worst bombs ever. But yeah, this movie, The Flash, it's like on par with Green Lantern, Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern in terms of box office.
Wow.
So that's
And
not great for a big tentpole movie that they wanted to do like, big numbers. Like
close to $1
they
billion
wanted this to do like Marvel 300 million, at least in the
domestic.
first
Yeah.
couple weeks. Yeah. So
Jeez.
it's not even close. So we've got Aquaman 2, we've got Blue Beetle. I
And that's it.
I don't know.
I don't know either, man. And I mean, maybe they use the Blue Beetle. It seems to me like they position that as their Spider-Man. Like if we can make this young character work and be a POV to introduce parts of the universe as he's, meeting the Tony Stark of this world, like I could see that potentially working because he's a likable actor and he's good. But we'll see how that movie does. I think people are still going to be confused with where exactly does this fit in with the future, because it's like if I don't know where we're going, I don't want to get in the car.
I think the best it can hope for is like Shazam 1 numbers, where Shazam 1 came out and it was like kind of connected to this universe, but doesn't really, like, it works as a standalone movie and people just
Yeah.
thought it was like a fun movie. So it did okay, like it did mid numbers for a superhero movie. That's what I'm hoping. That's like best case scenario for Blue Beetle. Worst case is that just no one goes to see it. He's got no brand recognition in terms of like people who know who Blue Beetle is. So
No, and he's not exactly somebody who draws money at the box office. This is a new frontier for that actor. He's great in Cobra Kai
he's a
and stuff.
TV
but
actor. He's in Cobra Kai.
yeah,
but
it's untested.
yeah.
You can't expect him to draw the money, and the property itself isn't helping either. So, amidst the confusion and general kind of lukewarmness, I think people have on DC in general. So, hopefully, James Gunn can turn it around. I'd rather have good.
If anyone
shit.
can,
Yeah.
I think if anyone can, James Gunn is the guy because, like I said, I trust him with his past projects. He's had a very strong track record. So if anyone can turn it around, it's him. But WB just needs to stop like meddling so much and just let like the creatives like figure it out, because that's another big problem is that they've just tried to change things so much. Like with the Justice League movie, like, oh, this isn't working. Let's bring in Joss Whedon and reshoot half of it. And they just made a bigger mess. And that's usually what happens when studios meddle too much, right?
They should have watched this movie and realized you can't go back and just change shit willy-nilly all the time.
Right. Can't change the past. Past defines us. Okay,
right.
WB, your shitty past defines you.
We've already filmed the Justice League. Don't get Josh Whedon. It's going to be okay. We'll just stick to the plan, guys. Anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that's about it for me. I just wish they would have taken more story beats from the Flashpoint Paradox, some of that darker stuff. Thomas Wayne, like you said, because that movie is really good. I don't recommend people watch The Flash in theaters. Don't do that, in my opinion.
Flashpoint Paradox is literally like a better version of this movie, right?
And half the time.
Yeah, if they just adapted that into live action with the same budget that this Flash movie had, it would be a better movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie is great. It has a great voice cast. You got Michael B. Jordan as Cyborg, Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern, Kevin Conroy Batman in the beginning and end. C. Thomas Howell. Anyways, Flashpoint Paradox, great movie, and shout out to those DC animated movies. There's a bunch of them on Max. If you want to continue, you could, with that, if you want to watch the sequel to that, it's called Justice League War, which is essentially doing the Justice League storyline of, what's his name coming in and the parademons and all that.
Okay.
But that is starting the new 52. So basically in Flashpoint Paradox, he comes back. The world's different. It's now new 52 characters. And so Justice League War continues that. And there's Justice League Throne of Atlantis and a bunch of other movies. There's also a bunch of Bat movies that are in the same continuity, dealing with the Bat family, like Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne, the current Robin, who's the son of Batman. So there's a movie called Son of Batman that's really good. And there's Batman Bad Blood and like dealing with the larger Batman family. So I recommend all of those. Like they're really good. Justice League versus Teen Titans, all in the same continuity. And there's a bunch of them on Max. So check them out, normies, if you're into that kind of thing. Worth checking out.
It's got to be very frustrating to be a DC fan right now, where the cartoons are so good, or the CW stuff was pretty good for the most part from what I've heard. Then the movies are just dropping the ball. Like,
Yeah.
man. But
In
at
its
least there's
prime,
good shit out there on Max.
Yeah, the Arrowverse, as it was called, in its prime, was really good. You had Green Arrow, you had the Flash. Flash was my favorite show of those, but you also had Legends of Tomorrow, which was a bunch of different DC characters traveling through time and fixing things in the past and stuff. That was a lot of fun. You had Supergirl, you had a bunch of other ones that I never even really watched, but that's coming to an end, sadly. Grant Gustin, much respect to you. You're my live action Flash.
Hey.
Not in any trouble with the law,
Right.
that's good. But yeah, if I could suggest just a couple changes for this movie, I would say do the Thomas Wayne thing, like I said, with Michael Keaton. Keep Supergirl. I thought she worked.
Mm-hmm.
With the cameos, like, again, not putting Grant Gustin or John Wesley Shipp in was like a huge missed opportunity. And doing
Seriously.
Nicolas Cage and Christopher Reeve instead was like, why? So, and the other thing is just Reverse Flash. Like, that would be such an easy character to add to this movie, to give Barry like more personal stakes in terms of having an arch rival, a Joker to his Batman, But no, we get Batman, we get Supergirl, we get other characters, not Flash characters.
Yeah. And
so
for
as a
me,
Flash fan,
go ahead. Finish your thought. Yeah.
I was just saying, as a Flash fan, I enjoyed some of this movie. There are, like, I didn't hate it. There are parts I enjoyed. There are parts that I did hate. So it's really mixed bag for me. Overall, I say slightly positive. I went in this movie with pretty low expectations, right? So I was pleasantly surprised because it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But then also, since watching it, the more I think about it, the less I like it. So it's like going down in my opinion.
Right.
So, very mixed bag for me as a Flash fan. So that's all I'll say.
I agree. I thought it was pretty all right. And now I'm getting more lukewarm on it. Like, it's just fine. Like, once the immediacy of the jokes and stuff wears off, and it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
Marinating
when you
on
first
this.
come out of the movie, like, you're still hyped from the movie. So you're thinking of it in a more positive light, but the more you think about it, like, the more it falls apart. That's kind of how I'm feeling now. It's like, was it really that good? No, probably not. Yeah.
And it's not a Flash fan. Like I said, I just wanted to see where does this leave the new universe. And you think from a business standpoint, there would at least be something in all these reshoots to be like, at least definitively, see that universe over there? That's the one we're building next. Like, there needed to be some signaling in all the fractured spaghetti that, like, this is the James Gunn one. Get excited for that. We're teasing it for a second. Like, there needed to be something to let audiences know where the DC is going. Otherwise, it's just a fucking wet fart. It means nothing. The whole thing means nothing. And that's the worst part. You spend 2.5 hours on something that will never amount to anything greater than itself.
Right. And I mean, like, how much are people going to go back and rewatch this movie?
Why would you?
When it comes on streaming or whatever. Yeah, like, why would you rewatch Man of Steel? Why would you rewatch Batman versus Superman? Like, why would you rewatch the Justice League or any of these movies? No one, except for the hardcore Snyder fans, no one's going to want to in like 2 years.
A casual superhero fan is not going to come back to this the way they might come back to an Infinity War or Endgame,
Yeah.
Because at least that goes somewhere. Yeah.
All that money and all that time they put in this movie to finally put it out, and it's not going to matter. It's going to be a huge bomb. And it's just like kind of an example of WB's hubris and like all the bad decisions they've made over the past like decade. So
yep. The Flash is a fast-paced summer action movie that stumbles across the finish line. A flash in the pan for WB. That's kind of my newspaper headlines for this.
That's your headline.
Yeah.
You should only review things with pun-based headlines.
I should. My letterbox should be that, huh?
Yeah.
I should do all puns. But
yeah, all puns, all the
Flash feels like nothing but a flash in the pan for Warner Brothers and the extended DCEU in the end. So
absolutely.
That's where I'll leave it.
Yeah. Disappointing, all right. But ultimately,
I'm sorry that your Flash movie wasn't the groundbreaking extravaganza that it deserved to be. As definitely, I think, an underserved character. After even just seeing Flashpoint Paradox, I'm like, there is interesting shit here.
Yeah, and even at least he had his CW show, which had a good run. and
That,
I'd
that
say
might
it
be
was
a good
arguably the
second
best.
screen thing for me. Give it a little Barry
Yeah,
Allen
I'd say
going.
throw on the first season. The first season's really strong.
I watched him
Again,
fight
it
Gorilla
gets old
Grodd.
after a while.
I was like, what?
Gorilla Grodd is great. There's a scene I just want to mention in Legends of Tomorrow, which is a spin-off from the Flash. That has a lot of Flash characters. Gorilla Grodd is like a super smart gorilla.
Yep.
And he's a super villain, not important, but there's a scene in Legend of Tomorrow where Gorilla Grodd goes back in time and tries to kill a young college student named Barack Obama in Chicago,
Wow.
Illinois, and it's a very funny scene.
That's
and
very
that's what
funny.
Legend of Tomorrow was great at. Is they just had these really campy, outlandish time travel stories that were fun. So
Yeah, man. Very cool.
yeah, check
out some of that supplementary material. Probably don't check this out, is our recommendation. But if you did check it out, feel free to write in, hit us up at Normies Like Us, on the Twitter machine,
I think
YouTube.
people
check
are
out the
already
vids.
people are already not checking this out. So just continue to not check it out.
Save your money for Craven the Hunter. That trailer dropped today as of recording. It looks great.
Yeah,
it's Craven time. Yeah. But
it's Craven time, baby.
Another conversation.
And that starring a fellow speedster, a guy named Quicksilver.
That's right. One of the
movies.
universe's Quicksilvers, tying also to Oscar Isaac, our favorite guy.
Right.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today. Hopefully, Colin gets out of the Speed Force by the time we get back next week.
He just needs to learn. He keeps trying to change his past. He's got to learn. He can't change the past.
Past is what defines us. We might have stumbled on an entire cinematic universe, but that defines us. That defines WB, and they got to own that as they move forward.
That's right.
And as we move forward,
I'm sure he'll be back next week. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Go back to the old transition out. Yeah, appreciate you. Colin's much better at this than I am, but maybe I can learn. I'm still learning how to phase between show segments, but I'll get there one day. But yeah, feel free to write in, check out the YouTube. We appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll be back next week. It's reverse Mike, I guess.
This is Captain Jacob, aka Captain Cold Jacob.
Hey, chillin'.
I'm cold.
All right.
I'm chilling.
Well, run, Normies, run. Accept your past. And get out of here.
Run, Barry, run. Thanks, Normies.
Bye.
Bye.